Tip of the day number 15. Children may respond to stress in different ways, such as being more clingy, anxious, angry, or agitated. Respond to your child's reaction in a supportive way, listen to their concerns, and give them extra love and attention. Need help and support? Please contact us at the hotline 311 Psychosocial Support at 722-6575 or 518-4157. Brought to you by PAHO, the OACS Commission, and UNICEF.
The opinions expressed on this TV program by the host, co-host, guest, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of UTV or its affiliates.
Hello and welcome. Thanks to all who have joined the revolution. Yes, this is UTV channel 124 on Flow. Of course, to those locked in on Hits Radio, thank you for joining in, as well as those locked in on TikTok, on Twitch, on Twitter, on YouTube, and of course Facebook. Thank you all for joining into the revolution. Today is Tuesday, the 15th of June 2021, or as we now know it, the 9th day of the 6th year of the 5-year term of the Chasney administration. Yep, They've borrowed so much, now they're even borrowing our time. I want to send 2 happy birthday greetings. First of all, going out to Patricia Lee Cozier. Happy birthday. Birthday greetings coming to you, of course, from your sisters, Nikki and Phaedra, of course, your wonderful daughters, and of course, your father, Trevor, your mom, and the entire home circle. And of course, many well-wishers out there wishing you long life, love, peace, and happiness, and knowing that you are truly, indeed, centered and balanced in the universe. Greetings also going out to my boy, Cyrus the Virus. That's right, Vicky from Miku North. Right, Vicky Frederick, yes, over at Bryce and Company. Hoping you're having a great birthday today. I still have not received an invitation to the house, but then again, for somebody like me, if I come Miku there by you there now, that's thing, them fellas come and give you how much calots in your head, any which way. But I hope you have a great day. I don't know if Bob, Clement, Henry, Silver, Jay, and so on are going to be lining with you today. And of course, your producer that you have down there now, Mowgli, stepping up, of course. I hope all of you all have a great day today in celebration of your birthday, Virus. And last but not least, I want to send a shout out to Carlos Regis all the way in Brooklyn. Happy birthday to you, my brother. This is coming from your wife Sherma and your son CJ. Thank you for locking in, and thanks to all those in the diaspora, whether you are in the United States, UK, whether in Trinidad, Barbados, Dominica, with a lot of solutions over there, had to go over to try to find work because Shasney Hill construction over here, also in Tortola as well, and St. Croix and some of the other Virgin Islands. So folks, where do we start today? Well, I wanted to start with Pan City because I realized that in all the things that have been happening, whether it's in Choiseul, whether it's in Saltibus, whether it is in Bois-Joli, whether it is in Dennery proper, the Daito, whether it is in Babono, whether it's in Grosili, and when it comes to politics, Castries Central has been underserved. I mean, it may be that you have meetings on the market steps, and you also have meetings in the William Peter Boulevard in the traditional run-up to elections. But for the most part, for the last 5 years, Castries has been underrepresented, not only by Sarah Flood, but by all of the political divide. There seems to be this lack of consciousness in terms of these people being left to suffer on their own in many ways. I'm not saying there haven't been people who haven't advocated, but there's a certain amount of education that is missing and people not understanding. You see, it's going to be reduced to a red versus yellow. It's going to be reduced to a Richard Frederick or whoever else, and Sarah Flood and whoever other candidates are around. That's what it's going to be reduced to. But for those of you, and today I want to speak to those who live in the city, not just those on Riverside Road, those in Wilton's Yard, not just those who are in Sanssouci on Barnard Hill. I wanted to talk to those in the CDC. Because I remember when I first presented this issue, a lady called, elderly lady from the CDC, and she said, don't worry, my government will take care of me, my party will take care of me. And I keep asking the same question. If you, right now, in your heart of hearts knows, because you've seen it, you know it, you see the proof, you have the evidence, from objectively verifiable sources, that you are willing to vote for a bad government, to vote for a corrupt government, to vote for a government that is going to guarantee you more bad governance if you keep them in office, and you're still going to do it, then what sense does it make? What sense does it make? Why even participate in society? Just tell the fellas, steal everything, plunder the country. I am voting for you to plunder the country. That's basically what you're saying. It's one thing if you suspect and you don't have the proof. It's another thing if you suspect or you have your personal biases. I don't like that one ugly, that one too fat, that one this, that, and the other. The way that one pronouncing that word, and a story I hear about this one, that one. That already can influence, and nobody can tell you wrong, even if you don't have the proof. But if you have the proof, then what to say? What to do? So let's talk to the people in the CDC now. As I point out to you that from 2017, 2018, Guy Joseph has been promising to knock down the CDCs.
The media questioned Minister Joseph over whether the 70-year-old CDC buildings will remain a permanent fixture in the city centre. In response, the Castries Southeast MP noted that the government continues to expend more on the CDCs than it earns from the housing development. He says the individuals who presently reside in the buildings will be relocated to whatever structures are erected on those lands. The biggest challenge, however, resides in the fact that apart from housing, businesses also currently operate in the CDCs.
When we make the transition, the question would be, we would give the business people who are there the option to move. So in part of the redevelopment, what we have looked at is the area where you only have residential. So if you take the area from the town hall going back, where there's only residential, there's no commercial in that section, maybe the first set of buildings we would put up, we would move these people who are in the residential. I agree with you for the knocking down of the CDCs, and I expect these CDCs to be knocked down before the end of my term in office.
Mr. Minister.
Hello.
Do you know the difference between a leader and a ruler? And if not, I am guaranteed that the electorate will teach you or will illustrate to you the difference between a leader and a ruler. You guys were elected to lead and not to rule. Thank you.
And yet they continue to rule because they cannot lead. They are misleaders. But let's have an honest discussion. Everybody wants the CDCs gone. They were built by the Colonial Development Corporation. They were built after the Castries fire, and they were built for a specific purpose which many feel has been outlived. But as we declasse the CDC buildings, what we have not provided for successive administrations is consistent, transcendent between successive administrations, affordable housing. Even right now, what has Guy done? He has put his henchman, Thief Money Mangal, in charge of housing. Mangal, who is a partner in Fresh Start, is giving Fresh Start to do all the housing developments, and the price of the land is being priced out of the range of the people that's supposed to service. And even when former administrations like the Labour Party under Stanley Felix were giving people land at $3.80 a square foot in places like Talvan, they'll tell you that the land is $8 or $9 when the truth is the land is $14.80 because Fresh Start putting in the infrastructure and one piece of racket going there. They're doing the same thing in Sunny Acres and all the rest, and they're trying to make out like this is a new model. Legitimize conflict of interest, nepotism and corruption in housing. Now, you know the worst part about it is you don't have to proceed on faith with this government. Guy Joseph and Shasney and so on have showed you that they are very willing and able to break laws, to break conventions with people like the National Trust and so on, and they are willing to knock down and destroy buildings without having alternative accommodation. So, you look at the whole thing of the jail, they knocked down police headquarters. So they knocked down police headquarters, and the same Philip J. Pierre that they say, you know, did nothing for Marsha, is the same police station in places like Marsha. They have to put in Babono, they have to spread prisoners all over the place because they've lost the real estate of being able to put people in the central police station. So now, no police headquarters, they have to spread and send them all over, like it's camping, they're sending people camping. But here's the bigger point. Think of Guy Joseph and what you know between him and Mangal and all the rest of them in terms of opportunists. First of all, from a residential standpoint, they have not articulated properly where they're going to put the residents, and we'll get to that in a minute. Then they are telling you about the people who have commercial businesses renting in the CDC. And they are talking as if you just move them to Sanssouci or La Clery or on the Calvary or wherever you move them to, that somehow they will be able to replicate the business or the traffic that they would get from being in the city center. So the opportunity, if it was about getting people out of there and putting them in housing with proper amenities, having yards and all the rest of that, because the inner city projects in the United States in places like Baltimore, New York, New Jersey have failed. So we understand that. And if you can have housing projects which allow these people or get them to transition, fine. And when we say, oh, they live in there how many decades and they're only paying $600 or whatever, if you add up over the decades that they have been paying, it would be the equivalent of them paying for a condo. But we don't want to give them that respect, because the truth is people like Guy Joseph see it as an opportunity to get prime real estate through the FFF connections. Who will he give the construction? Who will he have have the real estate? Will his sister sign for this one and that one? And then you hear the elite families of the FFF, and they have a foreign investor, and they don't know who the silent partner minister is that's going to get that prime real estate on the waterfront right there to put up their commercial businesses, and which big hotshot St. Lucian businessman has already put his dibs and is already giving the government campaign finance so he can get that property and that part of it and this, that, and the other. And that's why you're finding that we're paying over $500,000 in rentals to just one family, right? And the rest going to Michael Chasney. You know, that's how it is. But here's the point. The government gave its alternative, and they said that they are going to move the people to Mount Pleasant. Now, for those who don't know where Mount Pleasant is, if you know where CDF was before it burned down, if you know when you're going up by where the Voice Printree was, that hill, going up the Calvary side there in Castries. For those who don't know, you leave Georgeville coming up, and if you're coming up and you head into Laclery, that hill, the whole right side of that hill. The only problem is that I've realized with Chasney and them, everything they do must have ulterior motive. And if you look closely, you will realize that Chasney has acquired, he has used the state resources to acquire all the dead land assets that the elite families of St. Lucia could not move in times. They couldn't sell it. They can't get anybody to buy it over decades. So what they did was they say, you know, Alan, you know, you can, and then what he does, he acquired the Duboulet's land, waterlogged land down in Soufrière. He acquired this land that I'm about to show you, Mount Pleasant. The DeVos had it there for how many years, decades? Nobody wanted to develop it. So it allows him to take care of the FFF. But the practicality, or more to the point, impracticality of trying to relocate the people up to Mount Pleasant, you will have for yourself. And what's even worse is that most people in the CDCs there right now are totally oblivious to this, even though this is hanging over their heads like the sword of Damocles. And the question is, if Guy Joseph and them knocked down buildings before, Chasney and them knocked down buildings before, Concreto, everybody knocking down buildings before, and they had no place to put them, what the hell do you think they're going to do in the next 5 years?
Farmlands for sale, woodlands for sale, seabed for sale, coral reef for sale, Queen's Chain for sale, Black Bay lands, sold. To the foreign investor on Skype. Passports for sale, airports for sale, seaports for sale, airspace for sale. Auction time! Auction time! Ladies and gentlemen, it's auction time! JQ Challenge for sale? Super J! Sold to massive stores! Glass, going, street branch gone. Banco St. Lucia International! All the bank you need! Sold! One Independence celebration morning, we will wake up, flags waving, I am Lucia, and suddenly realize 238 square miles on the auction block, going once, going twice, going, sold to the cheapest foreign bidder online. Thank you very much.
In addition to the Printree Parliament building and courthouse, the former home of the Folk Research Center, the 16-acre Mount Pleasant estate, will also form part of the Castries Vision 2030 redevelopment project. In August, the government announced that the Printree Parliament and courthouse near Labrie Street were earmarked for demolition to make way for the Vision project. The Mount Pleasant property is located in Castries, overlooking the city and harbour. Prime Minister Alan Chasney told the business community last week that the estate will be transformed into commercial facilities.
The building of temporary buildings in 1951, many of those buildings are still standing. And we think that many of those buildings are structurally unsound. Many of them are remaining empty at this point, and that we're not getting the proper utilization of that land in Castries. So we are in the process of completing the purchase of Mount Pleasant, which is 17 acres of land, and putting together a plan for residential as well as some commercial facilities up there, with the idea of redeveloping parts of the CDC area, the main boulevard where the Princery, the Parliament building and the courthouse are, as well as the Castries Basin.
The Castries Vision 2030 is the brainchild of former Prime Minister Sir John Compton. The plan was to divide St. Lucia into 4 separate quadrants. A vision draft presentation is set for next month and will decide how best to implement the project.
UNOPS is assisting us in bringing urban planners in and engineers to now make that project shovel-ready. If I'm not mistaken, there have been several stakeholder meetings already, and dialogue is taking place, and we're expected to be able to get a presentation within the next 30 days from them as to their initial findings, and this is certainly going to be the roadmap for us in terms of implementing the redevelopment of Castries.
The Prime Minister also disclosed that a United Nations agency will help the government develop a new developmental control authority in the next 6 months.
Take the DCA out of the government and make it a statutory body. So it means the Ministry of Planning will be responsible for policy, and the DCA would be the regulatory agency. This is something that had been envisioned a long time ago, but they're now helping us to put the structure in place and to make that transition happen. And it's expected that that's going to take place, if I'm not mistaken, Nancy, within the next 6 months, that's going to take place.
Everybody run away from Mount Pleasant, but Shasney wants it. The property, folks, is hills and valleys. You can just walk there and you realize the 17 acres, to put it in a state of readiness to use, let us say even 60% of it, you'd have to spend a lot of money there. I spoke to Reno today. I did. And yes, I have his permission to play the conversation I had with him on this show. I want you to take a listen to Reno Gajada, to whom an offer was made for that same land. Take a listen to Reno.
Of them contemplating to either acquire or to buy that Mount Pleasant property. I know you are acquainted with it. What do you think of that decision?
Well, I did not even hear that government was interested in that project or that property. That's the first time I'm hearing this. Okay. However, you obviously must have heard that it was offered to me.
Yes, I know it was. Yes.
And it was offered to me at a very good price.
A cheap price.
Yeah, a very cheap price. But I refuse to take it because of the cost of developing the property. Very beautiful property, great location overlooking the city and so on. For a private residence, it's great. But if you were to develop it into lots or develop it into property that you are going to resell, it's going to be extremely difficult and expensive because of the terrain, and that is why I did not take it.
Okay. So you're saying that it's in the property because of the terrain. I know it's undulating. I actually visited the site and I saw it's like up a hill, down a hill, up a hill, down a hill kind of thing. And to get it flat can be a little bit. But you have equipment. Why didn't you accept the offer?
Because you see, apart from the equipment work for flattening it, you have a lot of retaining structures, which is going to be expensive.
Okay.
So yes, the equipment is easy, but the additional retaining structures is what's going to be very expensive. And you know, when you do the calculation, sometimes it's better you buy a nice piece of flat land at double the price of what I would have paid for it, or maybe triple the price of what I'd paid for it. But the infrastructural work necessary for this property would not be there, and the other property would have been much cheaper for you to develop.
Something is not right. I just felt that there was a motive, and so I decided I wanted to know who the property owners are or owner is. Folks, this is a map of the property. Right. In the center, you have the Folk Research Center. I think it's parcel 524 and 523. And the bigger piece is parcel 524, measuring about 17 acres. It is registered in the land registry as block 0849E, parcel 524. The Folk Research Center is parcel 523. I will now show you the land register for parcel 524, which is the 17 acres that was spoken about or government expressed an intention to acquire. This is the land register of the 17 acres that Shasta is looking to acquire at Mount Pleasant. It is vested in the heirs of Mary Irma DeVoe. Let me say this again. It is vested in the heirs of Mary Irma DeVoe. So it is very safe to say that the land belonged to the DeVoes. The land in question that Shasta wants to buy, acquire, whatever, belong to the DeVoes. You can take it down. Lord have mercy. You know, I want to know when will the poor of this country stop subsidizing, for want of a better term, the rich?
So you've known this, you've experienced it, you've seen the land acquisitions, you've seen a trickle-down economic bullshit excuse to take care of friends and family, to reinvigorate some sort of neo-colonial model, and it has worked so far for them. But the question now becomes, do you need to walk on faith? No, Guy Joseph has told you he expects to knock down the CDCs before the end of his term. Now, I've already called elections for July 13th, so let's see what they do, because there are other things that they're knocking down, like down in Viewfort. They're knocking down the security building by the UNR Airport, yes, LASPA. But then here you turn around now, nobody's even talking about that, right? And here you turn around and you have a promise of continued bad governance, nepotism, favors for the FFF, favors for the rich, while the poor stay in squalor. If you're voting for bad governance, knowing full well it's bad governance, what does that tell you? And what do you think you'll get? And do you deserve bad governance? That's the question you have to answer for yourself. Do your dreams and your children's dreams and hopes and aspirations have to stay behind for partisan loyalty on either side, just because of people like Guy Joseph and Shasney and their belief that the only way they could ever, and I guess they're right about that, the only way they could ever become super rich is if they keep you super poor?
Si moi pour faire crime, n'a fait crime moi-même. Madras. Hey. Freezer cadet. Boom. I like it. Chrome.
Pani street party se jou sa la. Pani l'argent encore. Si nous toutes prenons responsabilité et faire ça nous ni pour faire, bagay la kay marcher et nous toutes kay manger. En nous tirer la peine nous kay danser encore.
mask, wash your hands, and maintain a 6-feet distance. If we keep St. Lucia safe, we can keep our economy running.
This is UTV.
The 2020 edition of the ECCB's Annual Economic and Financial Review has been released. And according to the report, St. Lucia performed the worst of all 6 independent territories in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, or ECCU. Preliminary data, according to the report's overview on St. Lucia, indicates that St. Lucia's economy contracted by 23.8% in 2020, a major contrast to the 1.7% GDP growth experienced in 2019. Now, this 23.8% decline far exceeds as well the overall contraction for the regional economy, which was 14%, a historical low according to the ECCB, following a 2.7% expansion in the previous year. The COVID-19 pandemic and the associated border closures severely impacted St. Lucia's economy, evidenced by declines in revenue from tourism services, the main foreign exchange earner. The knock-off effects on demand resulted in, quote, elevated levels of unemployment, reduced spending, and increased financial sector pressures, unquote. The food services sector accounts for 10.5% of St. Lucia's GDP. 2020 saw an estimated decline of 67% from a 3.9% expansion the previous year. Central to this was the decrease on visitor arrivals from 1.3 million in 2019 to 455,151, a 64% contraction. The 2 major categories, stayovers and cruise ship arrivals, saw declines of 69.2% and 62.1% respectively. The largest contractions were observed in the following source markets: the Caribbean 84.9%, United Kingdom 65.7%, United States 64.6%, and Canada 62%. The spillovers from this decline on related sectors were 57.2% decline in transport and storage, wholesale and retail 10.5%, and communication and information services 8.6%. Value added in the construction sector, which accounted for 5.3% of GDP, contracted by 5.2% as the increase in public sector investments was not enough to offset the reduction in private sector construction. The ECCB predicts a slight rebound of St. Lucia's economy in 2021. It says, quote, projections for 2021 point to a modest recovery, although uncertainties persist with respect to the evolution of the COVID-19 pandemic and the distribution and uptake of vaccines both locally and internationally, unquote. Now, on the debt front, according to the ECCB's 2020 report, the government recorded an overall deficit of 421.3 million, or 9.6% of GDP, compared with 128.3 million, or 2.2% of GDP in 2019. The ECCB attributed this deterioration primarily to a decline in current revenue, coupled with an increase in current expenditure. Additionally, a primary deficit of 258.1 million, or 5.9% of GDP, was registered, while 2019, on the other hand, saw a surplus of 42.5 million, or 0.7% of St. Lucia's GDP. Where recurrent operations are concerned, St. Lucia saw a deficit of 223.2 million, or 5.1% of GDP, compared to a surplus of 34.6 million, or 0.6% of GDP in 2019. The ECCB notes that this development marked the first current account deficit since 2012 and the largest on record. Current revenue declined by 19.7% to 924 million, or 21.1% of GDP, driven by decreases in both tax, 18.9%, and non-tax revenue, 29.2%. Outstanding public sector debt increased by 12.4% to over 3.9 billion at the end of 2020. The increase in debt, coupled with a 23.8% contraction in economic output, resulted in a spike in the debt-to-GDP ratio to 89.8% from 61% in 2019. The higher debt stock was driven by the central government, whose balances rose by 414 million, while public corporation debt grew by 18.9 million, unquote. St. Lucia's public sector debt has increased by more than 900 million, or 30%, since the Shastney administration took office in 2016. According to this table, St. Lucia's debt is highest in the Eastern Caribbean, close to 350 million more in the red than number 2, Antigua and Barbuda.
St. Lucia's debt, worst in the region in the OECS, over $300+ million more than anyone else. Number 2, Antigua, is 300 million plus behind us in borrowing. And have you felt the relief of that? And all of these countries except St. Lucia gave stimulus. All. In the meantime, you have a prime minister that just does not admit reality because the narcissistic complex leaves him unperturbed.
Over the past few months, the government has secured loans to finance, among other things, road improvement projects, the redevelopment of the Hiranura International Airport, and also infrastructural improvements to targeted tourism sites. Given the economic uncertainty in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, there are concerns that the government should curtail borrowing, especially to fund projects which may not be necessary at this time. There are fears that the added debt may spell trouble for the island in the years ahead. But the Prime Minister says the country is in a position to service its debt.
We are not concerned at this point with some of the naysayers that are talking about this mounting debt. The debt is being well financed and it's well within our stream to resolve. The funds that we've borrowed from the World Bank and from the CDB and everyone else are extremely concessional. In some cases, we have 5-year moratoriums, and in some cases, we have 10-year moratoriums. We're talking about 0.5% interest over anywhere between 30 and 40 years. So we know that we are in a very good position to repay those loans.
Director of Finance Esther Rigobert has echoed the sentiments of the Prime Minister, explaining that the country would not have been granted the loans had creditors not have confidence in the country's ability to pay back.
The international financial community, the IMF, World Bank, CDB, ECCB and so on, would not under any circumstance borrow to a country without that kind of confidence that it can rebound and be able to service those debts. So whilst there is concern, and rightfully the public can question the government's policies and so on as it relates to borrowings and debt management, but there would need to have been a good assessment of the country's ability to regain its pre-COVID levels of revenue, as well as embark upon additional economic growth undertakings.
According to the Prime Minister, the government is focused on revenue-generating initiatives given its limited cash flow. This includes acquiring grant funding from international institutions like the World Bank and IMF and stimulating investment, namely direct foreign investment. There are fears that the added debt may spell trouble for the island in the years ahead. But the Prime Minister says the country is in a position to service its debt.
We are not concerned at this point with some of the naysayers that are talking about this mounting debt. The debt is being well financed and it's well within our stream to resolve. The funds that we've borrowed from the World Bank and from the CDB and everyone else are extremely concessional. In some cases, we have 5-year moratoriums, and in some cases, we have 10-year moratoriums. We're talking about 0.5% interest over anywhere between 30 and 40 years. So we know that we are in a very good position to repay those loans.
So he would not be concerned at this point because it's 30, 40 years from now. Shasney's 60, so he'll either be 90 or 100 by the time your grandchildren will be stuck to be paying off all of these loans. And that's just what we know of. Because my information is that it's actually $1.4 billion, not just $900 million, because of all that has to roll over. And then you have your Pajoa type situations where more debts are coming through other ministers that don't even have the authority. But you see, it comes down to you and your understanding of basic. Can you just keep borrowing and have no impact? Then again, if you think like Shasney, then I guess whatever the truth is, whatever you believe the truth to be.
The Minister of Finance will conveniently blame COVID for his mismanagement of the economy. However, that was the same government that boasted about their economic management before COVID. They boasted that their economy was the best. They were workers. That their economy was the best, Mr. Speaker. And they compared St. Lucia with other islands. We need to find out, Mr. Speaker, what is the comparison between St. Lucia now and the other islands that they boasted about before. COVID was an equal opportunity pandemic. Countries big and small suffered from its impact. However, the effects on St. Lucia were disproportionate, Mr. Speaker. Our GDP dropped lower than any other country in the OECS. Our economy performed the worst in the entire OECS. Our GDP contracted by over 18%, Mr. Speaker. We borrowed the most, and our people received little direct income support from the government. Mr. Speaker, the economy of our country was underperforming from 2019, and the figures will show. COVID made the situation worse because there were no surpluses to sustain the economy when COVID hit. The government must take full responsibility for the mismanagement of the economy of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said, and we agree, that 2021 was a challenging year. It was a challenging year, Mr. Speaker. Yet, instead of being cautious, he continues the boast. He continues the boast, Mr. Speaker. The same boast that they spoke of when COVID started, they are continuing the boast, Mr. Speaker. But the estimates, Mr. Speaker, present a very bleak picture. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "So much uncertainty about economic recovery, which is compounded by the fact that we are confronting several unknowns with limited fiscal resources given the erosion of our public finances over the last year." Mr. Speaker, although the government spent less than was budgeted in the last approved estimates by over $1 million, they still exceeded the target of an 8.1% fiscal deficit to an 11.3% deficit of GDP. And the fiscal deficit projected at the end of 21-22 is 7.9%. Another disastrous position, Mr. Speaker. There was significant shortfall of projected revenue coupled with excessive capital expenses and an unprecedented fiscal deficit.
Honorable Member, just point me to the page, please, so that I could follow you.
That is the first page, Mr. Speaker. The budget summary. You found it? And what does the government take comfort in, Mr. Speaker? It takes comfort in that they say the loans are concessional and the loans are for a longer period, Mr. Speaker. The government takes comfort, Mr. Speaker. So they are borrowed, they have the debt to GDP ratio of our country will be in excess of 100% by the end of this financial year. But the government takes comfort, Mr. Speaker, in the fact that
Mr. Speaker. The member,
Mr. Speaker, could the Prime Minister say the point of order he's speaking on? What number? He just says point of order. What number?
Speaker, misleading the House. I don't know where he's getting this 100% debt to GDP. There is, as to his own point, the social and economic review is not out. In fact, on the budget side, it doesn't make any reference to what the debt to GDP is. So there is a report that came out by the IMF and the CDB which talks about 86%. So please not to mislead the House, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I said that by the end of this financial year, the debt to GDP ratio of this country will be near 100%.
Mr. Speaker, there is no evidence to that. All the
that is my understanding of the facts.
Honourable members, his understanding is misleading the House because it's not based on facts.
Mr. Speaker, it is still my understanding. By the end of this financial year, the debt to GDP is more than 100%.
Honourable. You're not quoting any. Are you quoting any source?
Mr. Speaker, I am speaking from my analysis of the figures presented to me, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Prime Minister, I think he's coming to his own conclusion based on.
So it's a matter of his opinion. Okay, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the government has borrowed over $400 million this year. It has borrowed over $400 million this year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the government boasts
again, the member
about
is using information to mislead the House. How much you borrow doesn't mean that it's attributing and going towards the debt of the country.
What?
The document says that, in fact, what we've done is we've added $320 million to the debt stock of the country.
Okay, the government has borrowed between $320 and $400 million.
No, Mr. Speaker.
Mr.
Again,
Speaker.
The member.
Honourable members.
He's going to get the information correct. Say it correctly.
Honourable members, let's not start the morning.
Mr. Speaker,
wrong footing.
The truth hurts. Mr. Speaker, the government boasts
again, the member is using information to mislead the House. How much you borrow doesn't mean that it's attributing and going towards the debt of the country.
What?
How much you borrow doesn't mean that it's attributing and going towards the debt of the country.
What?
How much you borrow doesn't mean that it's attributing and going towards the debt of the country.
What?
So if you're listening, and especially those in the business community, and you listen to that, that's the same person that got us into this mess well before COVID, right? And then on top of that, you believe that the same person that got you into this mess, who can say something like that, is going to get us out of that mess? Well, and that means he's not in denial alone. That means we all are. That's the only logical explanation to the irrationality of that prose. I mean, think about it. But then again, if you want to prove that he actually had thoughts that were normal between him and his father, it seems so strange how they were sounding, but just 2019, 2016, and that was when things were better under the former Labour administration, and even as he was already in the rapid decline in his term before COVID.
Same way a home has to live within their means. Governments must live within their means. You cannot be borrowing money ad infinitum. We have to spend right now, based on my last, some $12 to $14 million a month in loans. How can a poor island like St. Lucia survive?
There was only thing that the Labour Party did well was to increase the debt. And those of you who are small business people will understand what I'm saying. You cannot borrow money to pay for debt. So if you have a loan, you cannot make another loan to pay for that loan.
So where should we go now? You know, we need some of these civil society groups to come out. What the most appropriate one would be like the Chamber of Commerce. let's see if the Chamber of Commerce is going to speak out against the ridiculous mismanagement of the economy and the bullshit excuses as our collective lives and the economy is literally in free fall, being pushed further down by the exploitation of all of these ministers that are just trying to get more and more for themselves at our expense. Let's hear what the Chamber has to say. Okay, thanks. Okay, folks, apologies for that clip. The Chamber only speaks out when the Labour Party is in office, and then the Chamber President will write in the Voice newspaper every week like he used to do under the Kenny Anthony administration. My bad. In the meantime, if you listen to nothing else that is said here today or any of these other clips, I encourage everybody in the public. It will be broken down to you, it will be explained to you. But folks, this is real.
What is the current debt situation like? And what is our current debt to GDP ratio? Is what he had to say.
The total disbursed and outstanding public sector debt increased by 12.4% to $3,928.5 million at the end of 2020. The increase in debt couples with a 23.8% decrease in the contraction of economic output. So what we have had in St. Lucia is actually an increase in debt and a reduction in our ability to service debt by 23.8% contraction. That's an estimate, but it's a fairly reliable estimate by the most dependable source looking at St. Lucia's economy, which is the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. These are our bankers. These are the people who tell us whether or not we're on the right track. And so this is a spike in the debt to GDP ratio, or an increase, a sudden increase of to 89.8%. So we're around 90%. The estimate at the end of November 2020 was actually something like 97%. And our information is that debt has continued, borrowing has continued. So we are estimating that there may be another $300 to $400 million on top of that. So that is quite significant. And it means that by now we have probably surpassed 100% of GDP, which should be a danger signal for most economies, because it means that your debt ratio has now exceeded 100% of what you produce in the economy. So once again, if you went to a bank to borrow money as a household, they would look at your total income and they would say to you, Mr. George, based on what yourself and Mrs. George earn, the bank is prepared to lend you so much money. The ratio that the bank would use is 60%. So if you earn, say, $100, the bank would be prepared to lend you, say, $60, because you have electricity, you have cell phone, you have rent, you have food, you have transport to pay. So the bank will not say, because you earn $100, I'm going to lend you $100. The bank will say, okay, I think you're okay for $60. And this is exactly what institutions say to countries. Based on the total goods and services produced in the economy, then we will allow you 60%. We are now at roughly 97 or more percent. And what is important to remember in that formula is that we're not looking at government revenue when we say debt to GDP. We're looking at the whole economy, which means that the indebtedness of the government is actually a charge or a responsibility on the entire economy. And this is why institutions also look at GDP per capita and debt per capita. So the institution is looking not only at what the government owes, but in a sense what all of us owe as a result of the government borrowing.
Okay, so there you have it. They have not reduced the debt to GDP ratio. They have not reduced the debt to GDP ratio. In fact, we saw a spike in the last year. It actually went up And various sources say that it is over 90%. I think there's a CDB recent review that showed it's possibly over 100%, 102% actually. So most definitely the debt to GDP ratio has not gone down, but this government has actually put us in more debt than we were coming into when they came into power in 2016. So that's one point on their manifesto. But I'm not the only one discussing this. And you know, this discussion has been going on for quite some time now because we saw all of this. We saw all of the borrowing in 2020. And the excuse was, you know, COVID-19. Let me tell you, poor COVID-19. Au Japon, COVID-19 has been blamed for everything. But here's what I have to say. You know, if it starts raining all of a sudden, heavy showers, and it's just coming down non-stop, let's say it's raining for a whole day or 2 days, and you find that all of your furniture is getting wet, your carpet is getting wet, all of a sudden you have to put buckets all over the place, you know, to catch water because it's coming down, your roof is leaking in multiple places and so on. You're not going to blame the rain. You cannot blame the rain today because it's raining heavily and all of your carpet getting wet, your sofa getting wet, it's starting to smell already. Okay? Tout bagay kamouye, you have, you know, you're swimming in your house, basically. You cannot blame the rain. It's not the rain's fault that now all of your floor is wet. It's your fault that you did not fix your roof. It's your fault that you have holes in your roof. So when it starts to rain and everything starts getting wet, don't blame the rain. So when COVID-19 came in 2020, things were not right. And COVID-19 exposed people. All of a sudden, all the floors start to get wet. So we cannot blame COVID-19 for everything.
And I think where we run, and we're talking about debt, the economy in general, I think where we went wrong is when maybe we could have gone wrong otherwise, but I think the cardinal sin which the government committed, and I know that it was in their manifesto where they promised to reduce VAT and to eventually get rid of it. Well, we know now that they will never be able to get rid of it. But as one who has been very familiar and involved with this whole VAT situation from the inception, went to all the workshops, did all the... as a matter of fact, I was involved from day one. And I have a fairly good insight into the whole VAT issue. And there was a very good reason why all the institutions like World Bank, IMF, ACCB, other institutions who were actually proposed and were advising all the OECS countries to institute a VAT program.
That's right.
Was a very good reason for that. And if you remember, all the other countries went before us.
Yes.
We were the last. We were really the last. And maybe now we can reflect upon the consequences of being last. Because I'm sure, I mean, you know, we are at the bottom of the barrel right now. And so there was a very good reason, because what was happening there is that the foundation was being laid, and we were almost guaranteeing ourselves a financial pool, resources that we could have in reserve, which we could have used in times of, like now, COVID. Anyway, what we did is that we reduced VAT by 2.5%. I have to remember that prior to that, there was a basket of goods. And so let us look at some people are saying, I've spoken to a lot of economists saying, oh, but the poor people and all of that. But there was a basket of goods, and there were only over 100 items which were exempted.
That's right.
So a poor person, or even middle income people, could go into a supermarket and fill up that basket and pay zero. No VAT at all. If you decide you're going to buy basic items. That VAT would only kick in when you step up and start buying items which are a bit more sophisticated.
That's right.
But all the basic items like flour, rice, sugar, onions, all these basic items, you would get away with. So they were protected. All these people were protected. But what happened when we reduced VAT by 2.5%? We were talking of a monthly loss of revenue of about 50%, $50 million. It could have been between 50, 55, 60 million, depending on the activity in the economy, etc. But let us level it at 50 million on a monthly basis. I've done some calculations over the last 3 years, and I'm coming up with a very conservative figure of $1.8 billion, which we've lost.
That's right.
In revenue. And you can check it out yourself. Over the last 3 years, $1.8 billion, which we've lost in revenue. I just consider what that $1.8 billion would have done for us. It would have kept us away from all this borrowing.
That's right. Absolutely.
We would have been able to build our hospitals, maintain our schools. The police force would have been able to get the resources that they required. The farmers, and even with this COVID situation, we would have been able to implement a good stimulus program to assist the vendors, the minibus operators, all the small businesses that lost revenue during this period.
We're fooling ourselves, or that we're going to help them by reducing the VAT rate on food items. It's not going to work.
Thanks for tuning in to your favorite content creator, UTV. To find out more, follow us on our social media platforms: YouTube UTV124, Facebook UTV124, Instagram UTV124, Twitch UTV124, TikTok UTV_124, and Flow TV channel 124. Remember, UTV, TV for you.
Did you get the COVID-19 vaccine? Then you may experience one or a combination of side effects, or even no side effects at all. Side effects may include pain or tenderness in the area where you got the vaccine. You may also notice a little swelling or redness. To manage these, you may apply a clean, cool, wet washcloth or an ice pack over the area. Throughout your body, you may feel chills, fever, nausea, joint pain, tiredness, headache, or muscle pain. To manage this discomfort, you should get plenty of rest. Drink fluids, but avoid alcohol and caffeine. If you need to manage pain, you may take paracetamol, not aspirin. You may continue to take all medications prescribed for you for your health condition. Vaccinate. For you, for yours, for us.
Parce que madame m'a quitté, moi y'a que ça qu'a bon moi problème. Femme m'a quitté, moi y'a que ça qu'a bon moi problème. Madame m'a quitté, moi y'a que ça qu'a bon moi problème. Femme m'a quitté, moi y'a présent moi ni worries moi do. Non madame non c'est Evelyn. Non ni en pitié yo couillé Jilin. Et quitté qu'elle a depuis Sunday morning. Mais à présent il y Sunday evening. Avec ma foutu passe à Evelyn. Yo fais moi à quoi il n'y a Lord darling. Et j'y casse puis avec à Dr. King c'est pour ça madame moi
UTV, TV for you.
Morning, Chief. That is the contract for you to sign.
Okay.
Going back in the office. Yeah, man. Thanks. Yes, see, boy, $50 million. If I take 10 grand, you know nobody will go check that. If I take 20 grand, nobody will check that. If I take 100 grand, you know nobody will checking that. If I take $1 million out of that 50 million, you feel anybody could really see that? Wait. It could be 49 million. And that go look a little odd. You know what? I could just take a 2 mil. It could be 48 million and everything will be right and crisp. Yeah, so fellas, 25 mil they give us for the project, yeah. So we got to look to try and cut costs, you know, try and make it happen. 25 mil, boss. Boss, that doing nothing, huh? Wow, boss. You see, so them business moving, I know the people telling me it's 50 they giving us and they give, so just try and do it half. Boy, that man is dirty crook, boy. You'll go together with it, man. Yeah, man. Yes. We gonna make it happen, guy, boss. I roll back into here.
So now it's time to play Connect the Dots. For those who haven't been following, there are some refreshers, but you'll have your say at the end.
So, proof of payment, then you enter into contractual agreement with the company. The government is also committed to repaying the loan of the 62 million once the projects are successfully completed. So if there's no project...
So the guy gets the money and completes the project.
Then you are committed to pay.
That letter was sent to the bank to replace all the lights, 21,500 of these high energy lights. So wait and see, just wait and see who will get the contract to replace the lights in the country. The contract will be given to a friend, to family.
Amount of stated capital, $1,000. $1,000. But they are given a letter. They are given a letter to raise $167 million. Bertram Johannes, the brother of David Johannes, Mark Johannes, who's the registered director of Pajo Limited, is Guy's right-hand man. If I lie, say I lie. 167 million given to company. Company, Davis Max Johannes, Kenan Johannes. Davis Max is brother to Bertram Johannes. Bertram Johannes is Guy's right-hand man who gives all the CDP contracts in Castries South and Castries Southeast. Connect the dots.
What I know is how to use money to gain wealth. If what you read there was a letter written, and I'm saying if, because letters in my ministry do not circulate on social media, at least as far as I know, the official documents of the ministry. So I cannot verify where this letter came from. It bears my signature as I see. It bears my signature. It bears my signature as I see.
So now, for all those that always knew of Buffalo and him wanting to be in active politics, he even went up before Guy Mayers for Castries East. Mary Isaac, who contested the seat against Ernest Hilaire, wanting to go up for that seat as well, but of course she settled for the quid pro quo. Then you had Peterson, his self-worship, wanting to go for that seat as well. But all the time, people like me were saying from 3 years ago, it will be Bertram Johannes, because that's who Guy wanted. The Prime Minister's Prime Minister wanted that. Now, here's my question. If now you see and you've connected the dots, how could this government ever be less corrupt when Guy will now be bringing in, and Shasne will be bringing in another one in terms of Bertrand Johannes?
Senator Mary Isaac, the recent recipient of the Public Services Long Service Award, was handpicked by the Prime Minister to undertake the affairs in the Health Ministry. That's when the UWP assumed office back in 2016. Now, Senator Isaac is often on the receiving end of the Prime Minister's praises for her stewardship as Health Minister. However, there is growing uncertainty over Senator Isaac's political future after Castries South voters pressured the UWP Castries South constituency branch to ask for Mary Isaac's withdrawal from the candidate selection process.
Is Mary Isaac going to be contesting the Castries South seat on a UWP ticket at the upcoming general elections?
No, she is not. She won't be.
Simon Seeley, chair of the UWP Castries South constituency branch, explained to NBC Prime the decision to forego Senator Isaac's candidacy was influenced by Castries South voters.
It is unprecedented that we also decide to involve the constituents. So actually, it is a constituency decision along with the branch, and of course, she finds it in the best interest of the party and the people of Castries South.
Wow, so you're saying, in other words, the electorate, the Castries South voters,
yes, voters, that's right.
They did not prefer Mary Isaac.
Avec moun ki ka sa yo ka di yo ka pon kout la et puis yo ka fizi we yo nan lot, yo ka chop up yo nan lot avec yo ka rive Victoria Hospital. Là yo fini yo ka complain la pani nurse, la pani docteur, yo pa traité yo bien, mais yo pa ka chiller pour yo l'argent ça là yo ka pon ay boy wom nan pour yo sa mette en indication issue, pour yo sa acheter groceries ek bagay bay madame yo nan kay yo. Plutôt pour yo sa ka ale ka prend tout l'argent ça boy wom et puis là yo fini yo ka vini complain about sakini ek saki pani Victoria Hospital. If you have a finger that needs to be amputated, it's going to be one price.
Wage negotiations already set to be a hot topic. The health minister was asked what message she would like to send to public officers.
I say to them, do not bite the hand that feeds you. I'm not saying for sure. Do not misquote me. I am saying I do not think that we have any cases on island that we are not aware of.
Photographs of an injured man lying on the waiting room floor on social media on Monday, allegedly at the Victoria Hospital. The minister with responsibility for health, Mary Isaac, has rebuffed the claims.
Look at the surroundings and see whether we have any such place like that at the Victoria Hospital. And I know that the posting said, I went to a hospital. It did not say Victoria Hospital.
Health Minister Mary Isaac urged St. Lucians to overcome fear and speak out.
That crime is big business in St. Lucia. It is big business, and it is driven by people very far up there, way up in the hierarchy of this country. These are the people that pay people to kill people. Someone just sent someone to kill Morris, and that is the bottom line.
A woman walked in there, I walked around the chamber, without a care in the world, her face as blank as the moon, and just walked out, okay? And she explained very articulately to the reporters with their cameras that she wanted to eat. She was hungry. And she actually said that.
A slew of interested candidates made known their intention to run on a United Workers' Party ticket for the Castries South seat. But in the end, veteran journalist Timothy Polio, cultural activist Adrian Buffalo Odlum, and Minister for Health Mary Isaac all decided to pull out of the race. Even Mayor of Castries, Peterson Francis, deciding not to enter the ring against Castries South MP, Dr. Ernest Hilaire.
I have withdrawn and I am giving full attention to the work of the Castries Constituency Council.
Now, in a press release dated March 31st, the United Workers' Party has formally endorsed its candidate for the Castries South seat. He is Bertrand Birch Johannes. The release reads, quote, incumbent Mary Isaac decided not to contest in a three-way runoff, which included Adrian Buffalo Odlum, who also chose not to contest for the candidacy. The two withdrawals paved the way for the final endorsement of Bertrand Birch Johannes at an extraordinary National Council meeting held on Tuesday, March 30th, 2021. Unquote. Despite the confirmation of the endorsed UWP Castries South candidate, MP for Castries South, Dr. Ernest Hilaire, remains unfazed. The newly endorsed UWP Castries South hopeful completes the slate of 17 candidates for the United Workers' Party.
So do you see the complot? Do you see the crooks climbing over each other and all being disciplined because the chief crook must have his way? You have $167.4 million coming through Pajoa, Bertrand, Big Daddy Birch's brother's company that only had $1,000 share capital. Letters signed by Guy Joseph illegally because he's not the Prime Minister, he's not the Minister of Finance, and he's not the Parliament of St. Lucia who would have to authorize that in the first place. So are you connecting the dots yet?
The recently uncovered correspondence from the Trinidad banker appears to contradict the minister's repeated denials.
In 2016, the previous Labour Party administration struck a multi-million-dollar deal with the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, to overhaul St. Lucia's outmoded streetlights with a more climate-friendly alternative. Over 21,000 high-pressure sodium and mercury vapor streetlights have been earmarked for LED replacement to the tune of EC $25.6 million. Based on that initial CDB arrangement, the government and Lucilec would have jointly invested about $3 million to the LED street lighting project. By 2018, the incumbent Chasney administration pulled the plug on the deal with the CDB. And in 2019, a new controversial arrangement was uncovered.
I didn't see anybody authorize anything. I do know that we have a company out of the UK that's going to be doing the LED lights with us, which will include cameras.
The Pajoa paper trail dates back to 2018. Although repeatedly disputed by the government, a letter dated November 12, 2018 and signed by the Economic Development Minister to Pajoa, a St. Lucian lighting company, suggests the Chasney administration agreed to enter into a contractual arrangement with the company valued at EC $162 million.
I cannot verify where this letter came from. It bears my signature, as I see, of a picture of something on the internet.
There's a lot wrong with this Pajoa letter.
Pajoa would leverage the November letter from the Economic Development Minister to secure loan funding for the project. Answer Merchant Bank, based out of Trinidad and Tobago, was one of the lenders approached by Pajoa. In a letter dated February 18, 2020, Answer Bank manager Gregory Hill wrote Minister Joseph, informing him of the bank's willingness to finance Pajoa. Hill also disclosed Answer's evaluation process was at an advanced stage and was close to making a risk-approved financing offer to Pajoa. Evarista Jean-Marie, an economist and a former deputy mayor of Castries under the previous Labour government, is convinced the now infamous Pajoa letter contravenes the government's established financial procedures.
The issue is not about choosing who should finance the project, The issue is one of procedure. A government, in fact, it is very specific in the letter, that the government is committed. Guy Joseph is not the government of St. Lucia, nor is the Prime Minister the government of St. Lucia. That agreement can only have validity if it's placed before the Parliament under the Finance Act and agreed by the Parliament. To say so is an untruth, and you're placing the country in a state of disrepute, because you're making, as a minister of government, you're making statements, placing in the public domain that are untrue. That's the seriousness of this, and you open yourself to all sort of dubious characters engaged in trying to secure funding for the government of St. Lucia.
Fallout from the Pajoa letter scandal also came from Minister Joseph's cabinet colleague, Infrastructure Minister and former Prime Minister Stephenson King.
It is the responsibility of the Prime Minister to reprimand or to take the necessary measures to address the situation, because no Prime Minister ought to be operating a cabinet in which ministers can do anything outside of their own purview and outside of the framework of the law.
Everest Jean-Marie has gone a step further. He believes the appropriate action should be Guy Joseph's resignation from the Chasney cabinet.
You can't legislate for people's behavior, but you could legislate for people to be penalized when they break rules. And in a particular case where, I mean, he could write whatever he wishes to write, but when he departs from what is normal, what is right, the leadership of the country need to show leadership. Guy Joseph, at the very least, should have been censured and best be fired as a minister of government. You cannot have a country run by ministers who are so unscrupulous and uncaring and placing the whole reputation of a country at risk. You cannot allow that.
A closer look at the Pajoa company reveals one Max Johannes is listed as a director. His brother, Bertrand Johannes, is a United Workers' Party candidate expected to contest the Castries South seat in the upcoming general election. Pajoa has never publicly commented on the November letter bearing Minister Joseph's signature.
So the old tactic, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it, right? The United Workers' Party has been running on this same minutia and been feeding this same gobbledygook for literally 4 or 5 election cycles now. Here's what they say. You catch them yellow-handed in something. You know what they do? They say, y'all did it too. Y'all was in corruption too. What about when you did this, that? If people vote for change, and people who support people like Guy Joseph believe that the Labour Party is corrupt, then by all means, if you vote for change, how can the 2 wrongs make a right? And how can the 2 wrongs, if you believe that, ever equate to anything beneficial for you or betterment of the country? Then they come with the thing about, let's just muddy the waters. Now, I want you to remember, the best consultants, most expensive, mind-bending consultants are working. There's Bajans, there's Jamaicans, there's British, there's Americans, Republicans, all down here. Cambridge Analytica and all the disciples and offshoots are giving people like Guy Joseph all the top advice, because we are not in the 11th hour. We're in the 12th hour and 9 days in terms of time that they don't have in terms of just before the elections. So they have to come up with a brilliant strategy. What do? They do the same old thing. But even in that same old thing, just muddying the waters, a certain truth comes out. Now I'm going to play an extended clip of Guy Joseph. Because I know you're not going to watch UWP, GVD TV, Sky FM stuff, all of that. But I want you to see the strategy. Guy nails himself to the cross and say they're just coming for me because the Labour Party want me out by all means, by any means. I think the whole of St. Lucia should want you out by any means, because you're a crook and you're proud of it. But the worst part about all of this, folks, is that all what he's enunciating, and for all the UWPs that stay there, and you know, there's all these accusations, and guy comes out with his little Rick Wayne manila folder each time, and he says, Rochamel, Grindberg, the Hilaire Jeep, and he comes with his misdirection bouillon that he comes, you know, just each time coming with that same thing. This time he even outs himself, because everything that he mentions it knowing full well that these all relate to a prime minister and a minister of finance. But let us take it in.
And I want to begin with some housekeeping matters. I I watched a statement made by Philip J. Pierre, and I don't know if we can get a play of that statement, our GVD crew tonight. The statement that I sent to you that was made by Philip J. Pierre. You have it? Okay, so I want you to, you don't need to take it from the beginning. I want to take it from the point where he begins to say, it is time. I just want you to take it from there and play it to the end, where he is talking about it is time. While you get in that there, I want the people of Castries Southeast to pay some attention to what we are going to see, because you are going to get information that a lot of you may not be familiar with. As soon as you read the GVD crew, let me know. And a lot of people have been telling me they want the Facebook Live information, so that I don't know if Champagne can give it to them.
Yeah, well, we have, they put it up on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because people are following us all over the US and everywhere. In Canada, in the UK. Can you believe people stay up in the UK to follow the program? And throughout the length and breadth of St. Lucia. But while they're getting that together, Champagne, I've heard a lot of discussion about some letter again, they say, that's circulating about that Pajoa letter. Let me tell you something. I've never heard more foolishness in my life. That is what the Labour Party has.
That's what they
a letter that says if you do projects, you will get paid. A letter that says if you are engaged and you meet the requirements. Do they understand what investment is and getting investors into St. Lucia? So, to say that there's a letter and that letter isn't... Now, I have said I cannot account for letters that circulate on social media. I can account for letters that are written and in the files of government. Because people can take any letter, they can doctor information, they can do things, they can say things. You know, you get these things. But I want to tell them, did that letter give a list for the seabed in St. Lucia? Did that letter give mining rights to Robert Ainsworth for all the 4,000 acres of land that he was being promised by the Labour Party government? Did this letter guarantee cost overruns for Rochelle? Did this letter pardon people under the NCA and give them jobs in Guyana? What? You see, when these people want to come in and talk about, you know, everything they accuse me of Champagne, is what would have been, not what is. So they said if the airport was built, we would have made a bubble. Why they didn't let the airport be built to see if there was a bubble being made? And I think I have to applaud Norbert for the manner in which he dealt with the lies of Philip J. Pierre. And Philip J. Pierre, I'm not in the business of calling politicians liars lightly. But you need to start saying something that is truthful in St. Lucia. You came on Andre Paul's program, and there are two lies I can pin to you today. One is you have the record of what I said about my opponent, and two, you said that there was no investigation pertaining to Guy Joseph. Yet still Norbert was able to come on his program and highlight everything that was said, every decision that was made by the cabinet, the letters that was written to the US. And up to now, y'all, it's not me the US took their visa, you know. The person the US took their visa, y'all, in y'all camp, ask him. It's not Guy Joseph. Guy Joseph still have his visa and he can still go to the US. That is, you see, but that is the deceit of the Labour Party. Now, The Labour Party is attempting to do some things, and I want to put them on notice. They came to the church and they appear to have gotten away with it because this is church. But out there is a different environment. Can you believe that yesterday the Labour Party was blocking the road in certain places in the constituency? I was coming up from Bexon. I would think it was about a little after 8 o'clock to get home before curfew, even if I have a pass. And when I got to Trapiton, another couple vehicles were coming down and they stopped and they told me they were blocked on the road, and the advice to me is do not drive up there. After 8 in the night, I'm going to my home, you know. Do not drive up there. The advice they would give me is to turn and go back through there. For now, imagine I'm in Tuapiton. I'm driving up to my home in Forest.
10 minutes away.
Yes. I'm now being told to turn and go around because Labour Party people are on the road misbehaving. Now, I know in campaign and in this and in that, you know, people get excited and think. I said to them, no, I'm not turning and I'm not going back. And that's the road to my home, and I'm going to my home. And to be fair with you, I drove and I passed. There were people with their flags waving, a small crowd of persons. Nobody interfered with me. Nobody told me anything. Nobody tried to stop my vehicle, because my vehicle had a big yellow flag and my vehicle is a well-known vehicle in the area. I want to put the Labour Party on notice and tell them that intimidation tactics they want to use will not work. And I think Flabos are ready. Flabos are more than ready. And if you want to have a campaign and respect everybody. Do not try to block people when they on the road, or when people are about their private business, that their vehicle is being knocked, people doing things. If they have flags on their vehicle, people want to pull down their flags. Labour Party don't want to go down that road. If they go down that road, it will not be good for anybody in St. Lucia. So I think Philip J. Pierre, the so-called leader of the Labour Party, although he doesn't have the gonads to be able to say anything that is correct, but I'm still appealing to him because he's the named leader of the party, to advise his people to conduct themselves better than they are. Are we ready with that clipping? Yes. Okay, let's play it. And I want to make a few comments, but I want to listen to it first.
Go ahead, producers.
It is time. It is time. It is.
The audio is not coming out.
Get rid of Frank Joseph. Not getting the audio on the station. And the days of Frank Joseph are numbered.
So if you can start it back just where he kept on saying.
And this Labour Party will spare no effort to remove Frank Joseph from office.
You should have sent it on my phone. Yeah, I don't mind that.
Parliament because it is time. It is time. It is time. It is that we get rid of Guy Joseph once and for all. We want to get rid of Guy Joseph once and we have to get rid of him. We have to get Guy Joseph out of the Parliament solution. And the days of Guy Joseph are numbered. The days of Guy Joseph are coming to an end. And this Labour Party will spare no effort to remove Guy Joseph from office.
So there you had it, unedited in all its glory. The big evidence bomb that they were going to drop that would exonerate Guy Joseph is clips of Philip J. Pierre and Kenny Anthony on political platform on the hustings with Philip J. Pierre and both Philip J. Pierre and Kenny Anthony. That's from at least 2 election cycles ago. But that's not even the issue for me. Philip J. Pierre has come out publicly to ask for calm and peace in the campaigning on both sides, even as Guy Joseph's campaign vehicle was careening through a crowd of Labour Party supporters in Mark Bexon. Guy Joseph just said to you that he went home and was greeted with no fanfare. Nobody knocked his vehicle, nobody stopped him, and his vehicle was clearly visible with a flag. His vehicle is well known, decorated as a UWP vehicle. But yet, a UWP operative is coming and they're saying, oh, they're blocking the road. But you, Guy Joseph, the Prime Minister's Prime Minister, saw no resistance and had unfettered access to your home. But yet you are saying the Labour Party is trying to use intimidation tactics. But he will not address the fact that they have been sending its multiple vehicles at Olio, in Soufre, in Bexor, including Guy Joseph's own campaign vehicle, of which the number has even been shown. And still for that, he will not denounce anything, but he's calling on Philip J. Pierre. Now, with regard to the Pajoa letter, I don't even have to argue. I'm not going to go back and relitigate Grindberg and NCA and all the rest of that. Here's the most important point. Everything that he refers to is what is being questioned by the UWP as the Prime Minister's authority back then, that being Kenny Anthony. And here is Guy Joseph usurping the powers of the Prime Minister, the Parliament, and the Minister of Finance. You don't have to necessarily automatically be the Minister of Finance and Prime Minister. It just so happens that is what is typically done in the Caribbean and in St. Lucia. But the fact of the matter is that he is literally equating his transgression with what he is equating it to be the transgressions or the alleged transgressions of former Prime Ministers. One last clip. It's a long one, but it's worth it. And then we'll take some calls.
May 16th, 2016, CDB had the Lanyon loan, approved loan. May 28th, now loan seller, take a save government to l'année, donc pay about $11 million pay pour street lamps, pay Lucille. 11 million. Loan seller, te dit, you changer toute lampe là et mettre LED lamp that burn less current and would create and help in the greenhouse emissions, etc. That loan was decided between the Minister of Sustainable Development, Dr. Jimmy Fletcher, and the Minister of Infrastructure, that was me. We held meetings together, held joint meetings, and the cabinet approved it, and the CDB said the project was so good that the President recommended the loan. Now, fast forward, we lose elections in June. Fast forward, we go to whole of 2017, nothing. 2018, November 12th, a letter comes that says, on the letter of the Ministry of Economic Development, Housing and Urban Development, says, please be informed that the government is currently engaged in discussions of Bajora Limited Associates about funding the street lighting project and the St. Jude Hospital project in St. Lucia. Now, what happened to the loan you got in 2016? Sakivi loan la. Parce que who currently involved.
After 2 years.
After 2 years. I put the hand on loan key approved from the CDB, the premier lending institution in the country, in the region. They have approved it for you, and they say it's so good. The president's recommendation 9/2021. Mais actuellement, in 2018, you are currently engaged in discussions about the street lighting project. Let's go. The letter continues. Now you see, Yadi, that speaks to governance. It speaks to how these things impact on the running of the country, and the bottom line, which is how these things affect the people of St. Lucia. Because you could have saved $11 million on street lighting, at least from the beginning of the year 2018, if you had gone with that proposal from the CDB.
The most important question to us, the Prime Minister is the Minister of Finance, right?
Yes.
And according to the letter you have there, why is Guy Joseph's signature on that letter?
We'll come to that in a while.
No more, sir, more relevant.
I do not know.
Because sila nom gi was ko sabu finance. Ki mo ne lot nom gi ka handle lot ministre ka si en bagay pour faire l'argent.
No, nous kay pour répondre ça, nous kay parle about direct award salary. Okay. Right now, listen to the letter. Upon submission of proof of funding to execute the above mentioned project, you know what proof of funding is? Proof of funding mean ou joindre l'argent. Ou ça joindre l'argent. Mais une de mes ou déjà ni l'argent. So quand parler par un monde qui besoin proof of funding, mais CDB a déjà l'argent.
So quand l'argent ça passé.
Yo pas point. Yo pas point. Bis il ka aller. Parce que me ka dire mo ka di ou ka demander pour proof of funding. So let's là c'est upon submission of proof. So let's là ni pour buy proof of funding on ni l'argent pour faire street lighting project là. Et mais là vini ou déjà joindre tout l'argent from the CDB.
Mais yo pas point, puis l'argent ka aller direct by contractor. Ou joindre
comme ça by contractor. Upon submission of proof of funding to execute the above mentioned project, the government of St. Lucia has agreed, and that is the most important part of that letter. Has agreed. So what you saying? Depuis où joigne l'argent, gouvernement caïba au contract là. Mais où déjà ni l'argent. Société là où tu veux faire comme ça, pour pas prendre la CDB à Bao. Pourquoi personne, PS Commercial Bank, ça n'est plus bon terms, passer CDB à. So, the government of St. Lucia has agreed to enter into contractual agreement with the Pajor Limited Associates. So, ça let's say like Kadi. Ou j'ai d'accord pour buy Pajor contract là. La question mondiale est important. Pour qui ministre ça parle pour government of St. Lucia in the execution of projects. Echo Prime Minister of Finance or Prime Minister.
Yes, I find that very dull.
Very strange.
Yes.
Now let's go. Because you know, has agreed to enter into contraction. So, ou can dit, ou j'ai bail pas l'argent, ou j'ai bail le contract là, ou pourquoi demander personne, ou pourquoi demander personne qui a fait.
Mais ça sur ça, so Guy Joseph c'est pour le ministre pays.
C'est où exception c'est ici pour decide.
Mais c'est comment on a eu.
Listen further. The government of St. Lucia is also committed to repaying the loan of $62 million. Écris ça. Now, so multiply that. Say about 170 million. Ici,
right.
Wow, c'est un chat là.
Hein? Et mes street light là, t'es 30, comment t'es dit? 30 million.
30 million. Good. So, c'est un bon différence.
Un bon différence. All right. Now, now, the government is committed to repaying US. So, mon la qui est là, the government qui paye ça.
Right.
You understand? You can the government qui paye et you the rate of interest to 3.59 interest rate over 15-year period once the project is successfully completed. I mean, I mean, see somebody or pay, say by Mickey Mouse. First, listen to that. Listen to what they said. They said the minister didn't write the letter. Then they say he write it.
Then they say his signature.
Then signature. Then they came and say, oh, these projects are funded already, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. Then they come back and say, another letter come and say, listen to me, look, the bank said we can consider lending you the money. So that is that's a maze. You see, what the government doing is they're creating a maze of confusion. So you tell them about Martinique, they tell you about England, instead of coming back to Martinique. So you're talking about Pajora, they're talking about somebody, what they think is somebody's personal life. You understand? No. So it's just creating a lot of confusion because they don't want to stick to the facts. This morning, we're talking about a loan that was given to St. Lucia that would save the country $11 million per year and would help us in our carbon emission, help in our in the environment. And you're talking about something which you send a letter to somebody and you have no idea who the person is, and you're asking for money when you had it already. These are the issues. That's what we talk about this morning. And that is famous with the government. They believe they can fool people by diverting. So you throw a lot of things up in the air without dealing the facts. You have to think of how these things affect you. Not how it affects me, how it affects you. So the facts are that the government got a loan from the CDB, these are the facts, to change the lights in St. Lucia. That would have saved the government millions of dollars and they would pay back the loan in 6 years. The government took a whole year, and in 2018 they say they are currently engaged in discussions with Pajor on the same street lighting that they had got a loan approved for already. And that would mean that they agreed. So they gave a contract. The letter says they gave a contract to Pajor. Now the question is, qui minister qui sa buy un contract pour $180 million?
Like it's something I direct to you.
No, let parce que nous te commencer, yo te dit, oh ça pas vrai, ça est fort, je vais partir puis comment mentir baba. Actuellement, yo dit oui, c'est ministère qui est là. Ou changer l'air de commencer. Yo te dit, ça pas vrai.
Nous avons un clip qui a joué tout à l'heure, tout ça en l'air. Nous avons un clip côté yo de c'est garder tout, mais depuis jours c'est garder.
Non, actuellement yo dit oui, c'est ministère qui est là. Et ministère has agreed. Man, c'est listen. Qui gouvernement ministre ça agree pour faire un contrat pour $180 million to a company? Qui gouvernement ça y est? Et actuellement, au cas de lettre, c'est to whom it may concern. N'importe monde ça paye l'argent parce que ou j'ai agree pour faire un contrat là.
Bon, monsieur Pierre, là, mettons les spots là. Right? Si ça fait un bas.
Ça va jamais faire.
Qui décision
minister can fire. Minister can fire
one time
immediately.
So la bani pièce depuis let ça sauf c'est pour ça
genuine ministre gouvernement qui fait un bail comme ça et men la fire.
Et il pas ministre finance.
Et il pas ministre même si moi c'est ministre finance et men pour ça c'est bail que has agreed. That means that Ouja d'accord, ministre qui a agree ça.
Pour si c'est un pays.
The government ministre qui a parlé pour le gouvernement St. Lucia ou pas premier ministre. Ouja agree pour avoir mon $180 million. Et mon qui a dit ça pas rien, ça se passe ça.
So the phone lines are open at 5727-588 and 4847-588. We can talk about this or anything else you want to highlight. We have a call. Good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon, sir.
Chris, look, by now, everybody, all St. Lucians ought to know that Guy Joseph doesn't have the legal or ministerial authority, or he didn't have that, he doesn't have it, to sign that Pajor letter. Only the Prime Minister, the Minister for Finance, and the Parliament can approve something like this. Now, Chris, we keep talking about the corruption of these government ministers and the corruption of the government. Chris, look, I'm no longer going to use the word corrupt. What we have in the person of Guy Joseph is a gangster minister. And if people, there are some people who might not understand the corrupt, they'll understand gangster. Guy Joseph is a gangster minister. This UWP government is a gangster because the Prime Minister isn't saying anything in terms of that pejorative. In fact, what he's saying is word to the effect that he doesn't know or he condones because by his inaction, the rest of the ministers are saying nothing. So this is Guy Joseph is a gangster minister. The Prime Minister is a gangster prime minister, and this government is a gangster Prime Minister. Fini, end of story. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, caller. My question is, if Guy can do it, what stops the others from doing it? And if he gets away with it, what stops the other ministers from doing it moving forward? We have a call? Okay, I'll hold on for that call. Folks, I want you to think about this. This is what we have discovered. So think about the culture of a cabal of men and women that meeting every day thinking about how to plunder the country. And in a time when they should care more, like COVID, instead they are actually greeding more, literally taking more. Good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hunt. How are you doing?
I'm okay.
And look, I've been listening to you and I've been listening to the other shows, and this utterance by Guy Joseph about Philip J. Pierre. I'm not one to defend gentlemen, because gentlemen can defend themselves. But it comes a point where you have to stand up for your comrade sometimes. I don't think this gentleman is in any position to judge one of the most impeccable men we have serving as a politician in the Caribbean, a man that cannot be bribed, a man that will not tolerate any type of corruption around him in the person of Philip J. Pierre. I think this gentleman is way off. First of all, as a known thief, a briber, should not be entertained in those circles at all of discussion when you're discussing impeccable gentlemen of society. So he just needs to be dismissed altogether. And while you're at it, I need to just, roll back a little bit in this forum thing, listening to this new lady who appear to have a hard-on, I don't know if it's because of the loss of some family member, for Kenny Anthony. I mean, when you listen to those people who have suffered, internally because of them not getting personal favors, and not having their way in the political realm, and then want to just come and lie about respected prime ministers in the past like Kennedy Anthony. I believe the approach for the media and even the talk shows is not even to mention the name or entertain them. It is just a sad day in our politics in Malaysia where you have men and women who you thought were a little respectable, because they have come out of the cracks, coming back in the name of this yellow-bellied nonsense and dirtying their reputation in the name of corruption, bribery, theft, cover. This has gone a little too far. And I think, history can't have a way of dealing with those people. And it's going to be a sad day for them when life will judge them, Life itself will judge them. And, they need to put themselves on notice and stop defending crooks. Stop defending those people who have kept us in poverty for 5 years, throwing a bone at us right now, and letting us call up to them that you have done everything for us. It really shouldn't happen. So I want to call out all St. Lucians to get ready, because this gentleman, the Kula YI man, have no choice but to call the election, certain date, and when he call it, throw him out of office, because that's all he deserves, and a bunch of crooks around him. Thank you very much, Hunt.
Thank you very much. Well said. We have a call that's been on hold. Good afternoon, caller. Hello? We have that call? Just double checking. I don't want to get into any soliloquy. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon,
I will be very, very brief. What solutions need to ensure as a result of this Padua letter is that Guy Joseph resigns or Alan Chastney is forced to fire him. And we need to ensure that Guy Joseph's name never makes it to a ballot in this country, in this election, and also by virtue of the fact that there's a connection between Guy Joseph, Maximilus Joannes, and Butch Johannes, we expect what's going to happen if by some luck or stroke, miracle or mishap that the United Workers' Party wins this election. St. Lucians need to ensure Guy Joseph is fired or he resigns. We need to ensure that. By any means necessary, we need to ensure that. And secondly, Butch Johannes should resign. Step down as a candidate. We cannot, because all three of them are linked to Pajoa. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. We'll take one final call if we can. But folks, you see the connections there. Buttram Johannes' wife works for Guy. Max Johannes. You see in the blue. Now note well, the original project was 30 million, but they're taking $62 million on our name when they don't have the authority to do it. And it continues to go on. Shasney is either making bullshit excuses or looking the other way because, as we know, Guy Joseph is the Prime Minister's Prime Minister. Good afternoon, caller.
Hi, good afternoon, Christopher.
Good afternoon.
With regards to this Pajoa letter, I remember clearly when the Prime Minister was being questioned by Andre Paul. And Andre Paul asked that question and he said, this is not the first and it will not be the last. So it's like he's even condoning it even further, saying that it's not the first time this has happened, whether it is on...
Normalize corruption.
Yes, normalizing it. Whether it is on the Labour Party side or even if it is on their side, he's actually saying that. And from very, very early, when I saw this and the statement saying to whom it may concern, it really, really puzzled me. I wasn't even aware that Guy Joseph was not able to do this on his own. It simply means that he must have done it so much with smaller amounts of money that he just kept going higher and higher.
Good point, caller.
On another note, I really want to applaud Philip J. Pierre with regards to this DSH letter that he did not agree to when he was the acting Prime Minister, because I see it as Teoa King being very conniving and trying to see if he could outsmart Philip J. Pierre in the absence of Kenny Anthony when Philip was acting Prime Minister. He admitted that the Labour Party did not agree to that DSH plan. But I guess in the absence of Kennedy Anthony, he was trying to see if he could outsmart Philip J. Pierre to have him sign in the absence of the Prime Minister. And thankfully, Philip was smart enough and didn't do that. And then again, he went further to say that he had actually given up and went to Barbados. But when he heard that there was a new Prime Minister, he pounced on that opportunity to bribe Alan Chasney into signing that DSH agreement. And I can clearly see him on the television. It's etched in my mind when he said, let's expedite the process.
Caller,
and then,
caller, I will just say one thing. I don't think Teoa King bribed Alan Chasney. I think that the DSH project was to be used to facilitate a bigger racket with Cambridge Analytica and the passports, the Global Passport Scheme, CIP. Like they said, they don't just get paid to win elections. They need bullshit projects so that they can continue to profit through CIP. And that's why St. Lucia hasn't seen anything from CIP except all kinds of numbers that are quoted with nothing translating on the ground.
okay. Anyway, I guess he pounced on that opportunity with Alan Chasney.
It was arranged. That's how I can say it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller.
Bye-bye.
Now, folks, we're out of time, but we're actually in overtime. And while people like me will make light of it to tell you it's the 9th day of the 6th year of the 5-year term of the Chasney administration, really and truly, all you have to ask yourself is, why are we tolerating this? Why are we tolerating shit like Guy Joseph being able to come and beat his ass on TV, talking about the Labour Party want to come for me, when literally that he's caught dead to rights. I mean, just imagine, folks, if you are a supporter, a diehard supporter, not of UWP, because you could never be a UWP supporter and truly support Chasney and Guy. But let's say you are a Chasney and Guy supporter. I want you to think about this. You as a taxpayer, you as a parent, you as a citizen, you or whatever, you're going to watch me and tell me that anybody walking around St. Lucia with a bank account that has $1,000 in it, it could be a vendor, it could be a taxi driver, it could be a student, because one of the directors was a student who wasn't of legal age to sign to form the Pajua company. And a minister giving you a letter for 167.4 million EC dollars, to whom it may concern to go and shop around the world to see what kind of racket you can get that ends up on the backs of St. Lucians, and you will tell me Guy Joseph cares or he's a church elder, all that type of shit? But you know what? Like I said, I've watched too much video and I've reached a point where I can see the patterns. I challenge them. Shasney and the blinking or the swallowing when he's lying. When he's breathing, he's pretty much lying all the time. But my point is, you really and truly think it's going to get better if you put these guys back there? And if you see and you know that this is not just bad governance, this is horrible governance on a historical level, both on the economic practices, on the malpractice, on the corruption, on the nepotism, and the disenfranchisement of you, the people of St. Lucia. How can you support it? How? Because literally, the guys are telling you the truth, which is callous, and then they turn around and they spin on gobbledygook only to have it be the truth that they wanted to purvey on you all this time. I'll give you one more example in closing. But St. Lucia, like I said, I believe elections. I'm calling elections for July 13th. Let's see. They'll say I lie. I don't care. Let's see. But if I'm right, are you ready? Because nothing less than history for each of us is going to save St. Lucia. Otherwise, like I said, we'll stop being the Helen of the West Indies and officially become the Pearl of the Caribbean.
One last question. One more, yeah. To please try to break it down to St. Lucians, because it has brought up a whole lot of, I don't want to say controversy. When you said in 2 hours you had this program 2 Sundays ago with the CMO and everybody else, and a few words were taken out from a 2-hour program in livelihood and lives. Now, I made my own interpretation on that. I knew what it meant, but can you please let St. Lucia know exactly what you were saying?
Well, look, I think that what I said was there. And it's the same thing I've been saying the whole time.
Yes.
Coexist with COVID, and it's about lives and livelihoods.
Mm-hmm.
The quote that came out was to suggest I said that economics or livelihoods was more important than lives. They coexist. So if we don't take care of the health of the country,
yes,
we're not in a position to then take care of the livelihoods. The businesses will shut down.
Yes,
okay?
It's true. It's true.
And if we do a phenomenal job of taking care of the lives, mm-hmm. but it comes at the expense of livelihoods, mm-hmm. we're also going to be in trouble.
Anyway,
because there'll be anarchy in this country. You'll be healthy,
mm-hmm.
but there's going to be no food.
No survival.
The standard of living that you're accustomed to will be gone. There'll be no flights coming into St. Lucia. There's no ships that are going to be coming into St. Lucia to bring any food. The bank loans were going to go to hell. So we have to focus on both. Mm-hmm. Now, what people have tried to suggest that I was saying, there was no point in saving lives if we don't have livelihoods.
Hmm.
And I did say that.
The opinions expressed on this TV program by the host, co-host, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of UTV or its affiliates.